All right, welcome to the next live that we're here. In a few minutes, we have Robin joining, and with him, we have put together actually our whole prospecting approach. So let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, so we're discussing from cold call to warm calling and how to leverage a prospecting system to generate high intent prospects. What are we going to go over in here? We're going to be going over inbound leads. So often what we hear is inbound leads do not seem to be relevant and outbound is way too time consuming. So that's something we often hear from prospects that we're working with our clients. This is one of the problems that they're facing. And this is one of the reasons why we came up with this framework for outbound, where we combine both um, prospecting via drip campaigns, but also where we leverage calling attempts as part of this framework. Give me 1 second to check where Robin is. Robin is here as well. Perfect. Really happy to have Robin here. Just as an introduction, we've been working for around 2 years together. We were looking at approaches on how to leverage automated sequences, omni-channel sequences, and actually in the last 6 to 12 months, we started working on a combined framework for outbound prospecting, getting intent data from it, and then combine it with calling. So maybe Robin, a small introduction from your end.
Yes, of course. I'm happy to be here. Thank you, Carsten. And so as you said, 6 to 12 months back, we started to combine this email outreach together with appointment setting over phone or direct sales over phone. And we have created really great results with it. And I'm super happy to start talk about this topic with you today.
Basically, some of the things that often that come in. So inbound leads do not seem to be relevant. Outbound is way too time consuming. So part of this, for whom is this webinar really? We were looking at sales consultants. So quite often we have a sales consultant that is there for go-to-market teams in order to start, or for startups or scale-ups, and then the combination of webhooks to really implement a framework where they can use automated prospecting, but then also leverage cold calling or warm calling in our case to get extremely high response rate. Founders and CEOs that are looking at this framework for scaling their startup or scale-up. And of course, salespeople or go-to-market teams. So let's say you are targeting a complete new market. You cannot just rely on marketing for inbound leads, but you need to leverage as well an effective framework to go in and recruit new prospects this way. All right. What was the most of the prospects or frameworks that you have been working with, Robin, so far?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I didn't hear you so well. Sorry. One more time.
So what is the main frameworks that when you work with organization, or when you are working with organizations, with teams, what is the approach you so far have been used? Is it drip campaigns? Is it cold calling?
Yeah. Okay. Now I heard you. So, if we go 2 years back in time, we only offered organizations and companies outreach via phone, solely via phone.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I discovered tools like Sales.Rocks that I started to it's a really waste of time. And to be honest, you can get a lot of more leads, you can get cheaper leads, you can spend less money to get per sale if you can find the combination. So, if we go 6 months back in time, we have pretty much moved all of our outreach from just calling to first step one is outreach, find the ICP in Sales.Rocks, and then create a campaign, click send, and then it goes on autopilot, the emails, and then we can see who opens the email, who clicks inside the links, etc. And that's very, very valuable information once we start calling them. And so works perfectly for most of the B2B organizations out there, I would say.
Yeah, thank you. So agenda for today, what we're going through is kind of the prospecting system that we have previously used and some painful learnings of the issues we had with it. We're going to go about taking the chill out of cold calling using prospecting buckets. In the previous webinar, we went over prospecting buckets in more detail, but I'll go back in here. And then actually creating the warm prospecting process, something that you can replicate for your own organization, independent of which prospecting tool you use or where your leads coming from, or what CRM you're using. We go through this, and of course our learning and next steps. Right. So let's start with the prospecting system. I mean, we have a sales process that I guess everyone is familiar with. We have a market side prospecting, then the sales process starts, onboarding, impact, and then further growing. Here we really want to focus on the prospecting part. Often what we see is in organization is they use a CRM and they try to have in the CRM the prospecting part as well, whereas your CRM is really for customers or people you have active conversation, relevant conversations with. So what we built then is something that goes with Sales.Rocks before actually someone enters your CRM. And I think something that we have worked quite nicely now with Robin, also with some of the clients I've been working with, that completely independent of what kind of system they're using, we put something in front of the CRM, fully focused on prospecting. And once we can see intent, then someone gets into the CRM and the sales process can begin. So here, why should you have a prospecting system is often in an organization, you have a system already in place where we talk about how to convert. But the initial on top of the funnel, like prospecting is not like sales. And that's why you should not use your CRM for prospecting. Once you have a prospecting system in place, it means you can have a repeatable, predictable process. If you just rely on, for example, inbound leads paid, it's unpredictable, it's difficult to scale. And of course, having a system in place can really help you to gain efficiency, because that's something you can roll out for other markets as well. This is something that we created actually before, and I think Robin is familiar with that one. Approach A was basically an approach where we use prospecting data. In our cases, we would pull the data from Sales.Rocks. We would look maybe at other sources like triggers. We would do omni-channel outreach via LinkedIn, email, sometimes connect with landing pages, and then go to a discovery call. And our approach B was we would use the prospect data, whether it's on a company side or we did this for Sweden, for the Netherlands. And then we would have the cold calling approach, where we would cold call via the business or mobile number. Maybe Robin, what was your experience from this approach, the pros and cons from approach B?
From approach B, I would say, I mean, the pros is that you already have a way in when you're calling that person and you have sent them on beforehand the email. You might already know who you should talk to, and you make the cold call a bit less colder in the way that you have something to bring up. You have a reason why I'm calling you. I'm calling you because of the email I sent you. So I think it's an icebreaker and really helps the process.
Cold calling or just the sequences. Like Robin mentioned, if we just follow, for example, on the side, let's say look at the marketing side for an organization. If you just rely on inbound leads, often low intent, you follow up, not relevant. If you have paid ads, you're burning money. And if you're not highly VC funded, then you can do it, but it's not a sustainable way of growing. For cold calling, I think some of the struggles we had is really low contact rates. If we call out of nowhere, we have to give context, explain everything. Someone has no idea. He might have left the company. He might not be the right person. So there's no relevancy. And what we see in drip sequences, we would, even when we had really targeted lists that we would send out 300 to 400 people, there were trigger events, we use hyper personalization, landing pages, everything. Even though we would have open rates of 80%, click rates of 15%, we would only have a 2 to 4% conversion to discovery calls, so extremely low. And this is actually the biggest challenge why we went and actually combined these frameworks. To take a look what we did now in order to take the chill out of cold calling, but also to improve our efficiency with the drip campaigns, we built this framework. So the idea is we start with our ideal customer profile, the ideal customer profile that probably in your sales team, in your organization, you have discovered what is really, who do we want to target? You put the characteristics together. You see how you can put the contact list together, whether it's LinkedIn, Crunchbase, Sales.Rocks, whatsoever. And of course, you want to go from there and get Disco call with as many people as possible. In here, of course, if you're not familiar with ICP, there is the course on the Sales.Rocks Academy for ICP. So that's extremely useful in generating your ICP. And then you can use the lead buckets. So in the previous event, we talked about it. So lead buckets, you basically, as part of your prospecting process, you have 4 buckets. It's the lists which you haven't worked through, the completely uncontacted list, the ones which have worked. And working, you can say that there has been a reply, there has been a click, someone has visited the website. Priorities, everyone who you previously had a great discussion with, but didn't convert to a discovery call. And scheduled is everyone that you have scheduled a discovery call with. So what you can say here is, for example, when we split it up, that bucket 1 uncontact would be your prospecting platform like Sales.Rocks, where you can use the campaign. And then anything in terms of cold calling, we'll explain later from bucket 2 and onwards. So that would be the system that you can set up. In the previous webinar, we went about those lead buckets and the strategies for that in way more detail. So I will not repeat it here. Feel free to go over in the previous webinar or ask questions in the community. And then the workflow, and this is the workflow we exactly work with. You would not start with bucket 1, but you start with bucket 4. So I think one of the challenges, Robin, we always had is, even though we have the calls, we have someone confirmed, not everyone is going to show up for the calls. So something that we really worked on is bucket 4. You start with, it could be that you have a dedicated calling rep. It could be that the same person who does the drip sequences does it. But you start your day in reconfirming every meeting you have in the next 2 or 3 hours, because you've put in all the efforts in terms of reaching out. You've started a conversation, and if the person doesn't show up, that's the biggest loss. There are some strategies for further improving discovery calls, show up rates. That's part of the academy. So you do this, then you go and reconfirm every single appointment for the next 24 hours. You send another confirmation for the appointment, which are due this week. Then you have the priority bucket that you can work through, and basically on everyone you previously had been in contact with but didn't convert. You go through them, you can call them up, you send video messages, but ideally you really dial them up because you had previously activity with it, you have their mobile phone number, you know they're relevant, and then you can dial through the remaining leads in the bucket for the priority. Then bucket 2 is the working bucket. So imagine we're doing our drip sequences. Someone replies, someone clicks on a link, someone goes even on the website, for example, the pricing page. You know that the contact has some intent. You know that he's relevant. You know that the email address is working. Sometimes you get the phone number as well from the signature. So I think then the focus here is really on calling this. And instead of having a completely cold call that you do, I think the agents that have worked with other reps, they have a completely different way of working with this. Like, what was your main takeaways from actually working with prospects which have opened or clicked on an email that maybe have visited the website? Robin, what was your feedback that you can say? How did it improve kind of the conversion rate?
So, I mean, it's been fantastic numbers in terms of, I have appointment setters who Monday to Friday doing cold calls. Been doing that for a few years now. And, the day I told them, like, now we have introduced email, they're loving it because we get one sort of free demos booked just by the system. And we also get, data for the calling in the different buckets as you presented there. I mean, I think it was 2 weeks ago, we called everyone up that we had a previous disco call with just before the summer, and I think one person booked 25 meetings in 2 days. So it's been fantastic numbers. So we have the calendar quite full now in August when the people coming back from holidays. So
yeah, really nice. So these are the 3 buckets where I think the warm calling comes in and becomes extremely efficient. In terms of cold calling, you would start with uncontacted, but we don't do the cold calling on the uncontacted. So we never call anyone where the intent is not verified, where we are not sure about is it the right person. So that's why you use automation, hyper-personalization for your drip sequences with email and LinkedIn automation. So at the end of the day, our reps then start creating those new campaigns and ensure that they keep running. But the priority is always on the conversion with the ones we've previously talked with and the ones that we have scheduled with. The most important thing, I think, from the prospecting buckets before we look at the system more details is, so the system works because as a rep, you take care of the conversion at the first place. You always take care that you have the appointments, you go through that, you get show-ups for the appointments. Those are the most important things. And then you only work on verified contacts. So instead of having to dial, let's say, 40, 50 numbers to even have a relevant conversation, and you're almost an hour or 2 hours further, you only work on verified contacts, which means your outbound effort is a lot more efficient. It can be cold calling, it can be video messages, but you only work on a high intent data. We sometimes see that people will buy really expensive intent data, and they say it's completely rubbish. With this framework, what you take care of with the prospecting side, where you launch those drip sequences, you get intent data, which is completely relevant to your case. The other thing which is nice is there's no more, okay, you go to a rep and say, here's a list of 300 phone numbers, dial them through. The reps take care of their own intent data. So if they do the prospecting on a daily basis, every single day they will have 20, 30, or even more relevant high intent prospects that come in. You can scale this up further to 100 to 150 relevant prospects. And when you dial them up, I'll later show some ratios, conversion will skyrocket compared to just cold calling or just the sequences. Now the warm prospecting process, to give an idea on what it looks like. You use a prospecting system like Sales.Rocks. You have the drip sequences, you use things like hyper-personalization, AI one-liners. You make sure that your emails are really targeted. Like I said, don't have campaigns with thousands of people, but 3 to 500, and you can really have a really targeted sequences. What you can do is, for example, you start with emails, you check whether someone clicks or there's some activity. You can follow up with LinkedIn messages automatically as well. And then as soon as someone opens, clicks, and what we're working on in the future as well, that we can track the pages that are being visited. If that happens, you can shoot those relevant contacts or prospects directly into the CRM. It doesn't matter what you use, whether you use Zoho, Pipedrive, HubSpot. We see in some markets that there are some local CRMs. It doesn't matter. The data can go in pretty much any system. And then from there, you can work with the buckets. So you have a prospecting part, and from there, when someone has intent, it goes into your CRM, which means the rep that's working on the CRM every single day will be able to work with high intent, relevant prospects, which even have background information. So when he does them through, the conversation goes a lot easier. What you can do is you can have people which are just doing the prospecting part in bucket 1, or people which are just doing bucket 2, 3, and 4. But you can also have a single rep doing both. That's something that I think every organization can set up for themselves. Here's an example how it goes. So we do the prospecting part to our cold prospects. Then we get a reply, we get an open, we get a click. So we know that there is an intent. We have verified the intent, and then you can have a follow-up with warm leads. It also means that you don't need to import thousands of prospects into your CRM, and you have no idea what's the conversion. But here, this is actually a nice way to start your funnel with those warm prospects, and then look at conversion from there. Here's an overview, I think, why the system works. And we have Robin here who can confirm those numbers. So the thing with drip sequences, it's nice in terms of working automation with copywriting, pain point pitching, but you only get 2 till 4% conversion. The problem is we have around 80% open rate, maybe 10 to 15% might even click, but only 2 to 4% convert, which means we have a high loss of people which might have an interest, but at the moment they don't have time, or this is something that comes in a week later. And in the system that we now use with warm prospecting, a high part of these high intent prospects which are wasted in these drip messages, drip sequences, you can now further convert using warm calling. So what we've seen is we almost have double-digit conversion rates with this framework. At the same time, you don't lose all this efficiency because you're dialing numbers which are not working, or there is no context there. Now, the inefficient calling, I think what we saw before, we had to call 30 calls or even more calls to get like a relevant conversation. Robin, do you have some numbers, how many numbers you need to dial to actually have a relevant conversation from your team?
So we used to say that if we call 100 people, our numbers is to be like, we can maybe get hold of around 30% of that, like actually speaking to. So and out of those 30%, maybe it's the wrong person, maybe it's they don't want to have it's a bad moment to call, etc., or they have no idea who we are because you haven't sent it from before.
So there's a significant loss. I mean, this is why you need to dial through, especially during Corona, through so many numbers. What you see here is then when people are already warmed up through the prospecting part, what we saw on average is around 7 calls only needed to have a relevant conversation. It's almost a factor of 4. And also what we've seen, that the conversion rate from people which have first been prospected to by the system and later being contacted, they're aware the outcome of the call is even a lot better. And I think that the last step is kind of the predictability or accountability. If you are a rep, you kind of, with this prospecting process, you can really follow a flow where you start your day ensuring that you hit your show-offs for the discovery calls, and then you work through everything who has been warm, and then you know that for the next day I need to have a new inflow of high intent prospects. So it's really a system that you can set up in your organization, no matter what size, no matter what system you have implemented. You can say and split it up into have people who just take care of the outbound sequences, the campaigns. Some people just do the calling. You can have kind of full cycle prospecting reps. That's something that you can decide for your own organization. And there's quite some freedom in it, but it's a great framework to have a more structured prospecting approach and a lot more efficiency gain. Now to connect the dot, I think the key takeaways here on why you can implement it is have a system next to your CRM. Don't let your reps use a CRM. Have a system, whether it could be anything upfront with the focus on prospecting and identifying intent. Don't use that in your CRM, but have something in front of it. Your CRM should really be used for your customers. High intent prospecting is with the prospecting upfront that you can use via LinkedIn, via email landing pages. You can see what kind of links someone click, how long does someone stay on the website, and you know exactly what are the relevant people that I can reach out to. So instead of wasting 95% of your time on cold calling, you only have conversations with high intent prospects. At the same time, it will boost the moral of the rep. And this system, in most organizations, there was a sales process or there's something that has set up, but prospecting seems to be random. There seems to be something coming from marketing. We try a bit mouth to mouth. So all kind of different things are there, but there's no process. Especially with this thing, I think it's a great way of having a system. So I think these are the main takeaways that we have from our prospecting system with warm leads. Maybe this is a good chance as well to let the audience ask some questions about anything that comes to their mind. So feel free to shoot in any questions.
Yes, sounds good.
Jana, you're monitoring everything, so maybe she will let us know whether something has come in.
Oh, okay.
Lovely. So no further questions. Robin, maybe some thoughts from your end. How would you further scale up this system? What other improvements do you see, or what are your thoughts about this?
Yes, so I'm super excited to start scale up the outreach via the combination phone and email after the summer now. And what I also looking at, maybe that could be a next webinar or something, is how to also add video. So email and then personalized video and then the phone call. So I think you never learn enough. You can always learn more about how to optimize the processes, and that's my next sort of thing I will deep into.
And the video prospecting is part of when someone has clicked, or you would build it as part of the drip sequence? Where would you do that?
I would do that with the email response. So when someone responds on the email, I respond back with a video.
Cool. I think that's a nice takeaway, something that definitely we can experiment further. I like the idea as well about further tracking where on the website someone gives, working with maybe prospect scoring, and even fine-tune further those high intent prospects to see who is really the most relevant one. And I think after summer, this is something that we'll continue to work on. Well, if there are no further questions, I think thanks a lot everyone who has been joining the webinar. And then, well, feel free to drop any questions in the community. If there are any keywords which you're not familiar with, we have the Academy. Anyone who has joined this webinar, feel free to shoot me a message and I'll give you access to the course. It's also free of charge. And then, well, looking forward to scale this system further with our clients. And if you are in a situation where you just want to have a chat about a system you're using, how to improve it, drop us a message, and just happy to have a chat. All right, thank you so much.
Perfect. And I also want to add that, Carsten, if someone needs any help sort of to create the script for cold calling, you should shoot out the question to me and I will, of course, help you free of charge as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Robin.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.